Hey everyone, Mark Meckler here, president of Convention Estates, and I'm excited to be with you for the Sunday night BattleCry. Unbelievably, the bed is empty. The dogs are not here with me. Makes me a little nervous. They're probably out causing trouble somewhere. Hopefully Patty's got eyes on them. Who knows what they're doing? When you have 250 pounds of Great Dane in the house, almost anything can happen with Winston and Levi. We'll see. Maybe Winston. Maybe we can get Winston in here in a little bit. Anyway, let's talk about our call to action this week. It's not watch the Great Danes. The call to action is simply vote. Vote. You got to get out and vote. You got to do it as early as you possibly can. And, you know, on a personal level, I hate early voting. I wish we didn't have early voting. I think we should have one day of voting. I think it should be a national holiday. I think everybody should be required to get some time off to go vote if they want to vote. I believe it should always be completely in person. We should have enough polling places to make that plausible. I don't care what that costs. I think it's worth doing it. I think we should do it on paper ballots. I think you should have to show an ID. But that's not the system that we have. And the system that we have all over the place involves early voting, and sometimes really early voting. Like, I think voting starts here in a week or so, roughly, in North Carolina. Like, that's now. And it's really important that we as conservatives get out and do that. Vote early, whether that's by mail, which I particularly hate, or in-person early voting, which we have here in Texas, which is what I'll be doing. Get out and get it done as early as possible. And why do I tell you that? Look, I'm a guy who really likes election day. I like going to the polls on election day. I like standing in line. I hate standing in line generally, like really hate standing in line. I don't stand in line for almost anything, but to vote, I actually like it. I feel like I'm doing my civic duty. I like being out there with my neighbors. Sometimes I go with my friends. I definitely go with my wife. Sometimes I go with my kids. It's just kind of fun to be out there and to be Americans all together, to be out there casting our vote. Frankly, whether we're Democrats or Republicans or conservatives or liberals or whatever it is, hopefully the communists aren't voting. But other than that, to be out there voting with everybody. And so I do it early. I do it in person early. I go to the polls because I like going to the polls. I like getting my little I voted sticker, right? I know it sounds silly, but I like that civic participation. But I always do it early now. And the reason is because I've learned my lesson in the past. There have been times when I thought I was going to vote on election day, and I ended up needing to travel, being called away, and realizing the early voting's over, and now I got to be out of town. What am I going to do? And that's a terrible feeling because your vote makes a difference. And I know there are people who say, oh, my vote doesn't matter. I live in California or wherever you live, or, you know, that's just so many people vote. It doesn't matter. Not true. I've seen elections in which COS has been involved where the election was decided by 6 votes. Another one I saw recently, 256 votes. And so the reality is your vote does matter. And the more you get down into the local elections, the more your vote matters, because that election might be decided by 6 votes or 100 votes or 30 votes. And if you didn't vote and your person didn't win, and now you've got some Marxist in that office, you're going to blame yourself, and you should. So the early voting coming up right now. I want to make sure you remember, get out there and vote, and write to me and let me know that you voted. I'll appreciate that. Let's see who votes the earliest according to the law, and only one time, please. All right, let's talk about the culture. You know, we all lament the culture so often. We're frustrated by what we see. We see all this stuff going on mainstream media. We see it in the movies. We hear it in music. We see it everywhere. And it's not good usually. But I want you to understand that there are a lot of places where I think we actually are winning the culture war. And the way we win the culture war is by being engaged in the culture war. I talked about a few weeks ago about my friend Robbie Starbuck, who's going after all these companies with DEI on their websites. He's gone after Harley Davidson and got him to back down. He went after John Deere, got him to back down. Tractor Supply got him to back down. Seems like the latest is Ford is now backing down. Now, I want to be crystal clear about this. I don't think they're stopping their DEI stuff. I think they're just pulling it down from their websites so it doesn't show so publicly. We're going to have to keep pushing, but we are winning in the DEI racket game. We're pushing back against this and exposing it, and people don't like it. Now, a lot of you remember Matt Walsh, our friend Matt Walsh on the Daily Wire, had a movie last year called Am I a Woman? Incredible smash hit movie, completely transformed the dialogue around what it means to be a woman in America, around all the madness of gender ideology and childhood castration and childhood sexual mutilation and gender modification, all this crazy bad stuff. Matt Walsh was at the point of the spear on that one. And I think he's changed the dialogue on that so much. We're absolutely winning. Well, Matt has a new movie coming out September 13th. It's making me stutter. I'm so excited about it. That new movie is called Am I Racist? And it stars Matt Walsh, created by Matt Walsh. One of my friends, Sean Hampton, is one of the producers. Great guy. We talk all the time. And because I know these guys, I got a pre-screener. And that means me and Patty got to watch the movie this week. And I got to tell you, it's amazing. It is hilarious. It is provocative. It shows you the DEI movement from the inside out. It shows you the insanity of it, the craziness of it, and fundamentally, ultimately, the grift of it. It's all about making money for the people who participate in it. And they don't really hide that. And in the movie, as Matt is so good at doing, he draws these people out and gets them to admit things that are absolutely unbelievable. You literally will not believe the things people say. I can't give away any of the actual spoilers, but I want you to know Robin DiAngelo, who wrote White Fragility, one of the worst books written in the last 100 years, done incredible damage in our society. Matt actually got an interview with her. Oh, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. So I wish I could give it away because it's so fun and funny and amazing. She has no idea what's going on. And Matt just takes it to her. She never realizes what's going on during the interview. It's absolutely incredible. So you're going to want to see this. You're going to want to see all the other madness. September 13th, you can pre-buy those tickets at amiracist.com. And by the way, I'm working on some deals where we might rent entire theaters in a city. It's not very expensive. So if you're interested in doing that and getting a whole bunch of people together and renting a theater, just write to me at conventionestates.com, ask Mark, and producer G will forward that to me. We can talk about getting a theater in your town to show it. Maybe have some of the producers come or at least talk to you guys by video. Pretty exciting stuff. Again, amiracist.com. That movie opens September 13th. Pre-buy tickets right now. Of course, we can't go through this week without talking about the one, the only, the first Kamala view, right? The Kamala interview. Unbelievable. About 40 days into a presidential campaign, Kamala Harris sat down for her first interview, and it was a softball interview with Dana Bash. What is with these people and how they pronounce their names, by the way? D-A-N-A, isn't that Dana? No, of course she has to pronounce it Dana. Sorry, just my little pet peeve. Dana Bash sits down and not only pitches softballs, I would say pitches marshmallows. Yeah, marshmallows. Like so soft, it doesn't, you could hit her with it as hard as you want and it wouldn't hurt. She would just eat it and say how sweet it was. Dana Bash did such a poor job, in my opinion, of service to the American people. She asked virtually no follow-up questions of Kamala Harris. And a lot of the questions sounded like a parent that was leading their children or a child to the right answer. You're quizzing your kid and you're asking the question in such a way that you know you're leading that person to the correct answer. And that is the way Dana Bash conducted this interview. It was not a hard-hitting journalistic interview. It was not a journalistic interview. Now, Kamala did bring Tim Walz, and I thought that was pretty hilarious. It was like she had to bring her like her service animal with her, right? Her comfort dog or something like that to give her comfort during the interview, or maybe like bringing her daddy to the interview. Like, how horrifying is this? You have a woman running for president and she's holding herself up as some sort of historic figure, first Black woman to run for president. And she needs daddy to come along and hold her hand on her first quote unquote solo interview, which it wasn't a solo interview because he was there. She still has yet to do a solo interview. And so I think it was bad enough that he was there. It made her look weak and foolish and pathetic, which she's really good at anyway. And I thought that he would intervene and add something. I really thought that he would protect her. I thought he would do better than her. Oh my gosh, he was worse. He was actually worse. I mean, not in the way he speaks, not in that he can't string a couple of sentences together, but he was just terrible. And to her credit, Dana Bash did push him a little bit. For example, on the idea that he has misrepresented his military service, he misrepresented his DUI, he's misrepresented some other stuff. She pushed him, and he like on whether he's been in war. He talked about weapons of war that he carried in war. He's never been in a war. He never carried a weapon of war in a war. And his excuse, bad grammar. Yeah. He said his wife, the English teacher, says that he has bad grammar. So I was an English literature major in college, and I can tell you it's not a grammar problem. Yeah, when you lie about something, it's not a grammar problem. It's never a grammar problem. You're either telling the truth or not. You could tell the truth with bad grammar or good grammar, in between grammar, neutral grammar, but when you're lying, you're lying. And it doesn't matter whether you're using bad grammar or good grammar, proper grammar or improper grammar. And she kind of nailed him on that. I would say she pushed him on it, but never brought the hammer down. So, all in all, I thought it went about as poorly as it could go for a softball marshmallow interview, sit down interview with a very friendly, I wouldn't even call her a journalist. How about Democratic operative? But it was bad enough, honestly, that the Trump campaign instantaneously turned around and created a political ad out of it. And I would say this particular political ad is one of the most devastating I've seen. The theme is my values have not changed, because as Kamala was asked about changing her position on certain things, she now has a catchphrase. She says over and over, it's almost like a verbal tick, my values have not changed. So check out this new ad from the Trump team.
Values have not changed. Reduce red meat specifically. Yes.
The Boston Marathon bomber. They should be able to vote.
I think we should have that conversation.
Abolish ICE.
Yes. Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes, and I'm in favor of banning fracking. I am prepared to pass a Green New Deal.
I support a mandatory buyback program.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals.
The idea that more police equals more safety, that's just wrong.
Policing, as we know, goes all the way back to slave patrols and that idea.
You are absolutely right.
Where do you stand on defund the police?
We need to take a look at these budgets.
Do you ban plastic straws?
I think we should.
70 to 80% tax rate.
I think that's fantastic.
Chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund.
How dare we speak Merry Christmas?
And yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing.
Wow. I mean, that is devastating. I got to say, that's the best political ad of the season. Frankly, pretty much run that wall to wall from here to there and everywhere and everything in between. Now, there's some things in that ad that particularly offend me. And I think the number one thing that offends me out of everything in there, it's not the 75% tax rate. Of course, I don't like that. That's very uncomfortable. It's not even ban Merry Christmas. I don't like that. That's ridiculous. I won't go along with that. But ban plastic straws. Ban plastic straws? Really? Are you kidding me? Have you ever tried to drink out of one of those damn paper straws? Like, they just collapse immediately. You end up with like a wad of cardboard in your mouth. This woman is a full-blown tyrannical communist dictator who wants to ban plastic straws. If that's not enough to get you to vote against her, Lord knows. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going to get you to vote against her. Anyway, great, devastating political commercial. I hope they run it over and over. I think if you are against Kamala Harris, you should grab that commercial and you should spread that around to absolutely every single person that you know. It's ugly, and I would send it to anybody you know who's thinking about voting for her. All right, moving right along to other kinds of terrorists other than people who are trying to ban plastic straws. Let's go to the Middle East. Israel just did an incredibly daring hostage rescue inside a tunnel in Rafah. Now, I want you to remember, Rafah is the place that the Biden administration threatened Israel and said, you shouldn't go there. You can't go there. You won't accomplish anything there. You won't be able to accomplish anything there. We're not going to allow you to go there. We don't want you to go there. We're going to withhold weapons if you go there. And Israel just said, we're going there. Right? Because they had to go there to complete the military mission and because they knew hostages were still there. And this week that proved to be true. And they did a daring hostage rescue. We don't know too many details of it, but a hostage was rescued from a tunnel. And this particular hostage blows up the entire Muslim narrative in the Middle East. Those Hamatzis here in the U.S. that say how bad Israel is to Muslims. Well, this particular victim, this particular hostage was, wait for it, drum roll, a Muslim. That's right. A Bedouin factory worker from Israel, an Israeli citizen who was rescued I mean, you want to talk about a multicultural society. This guy was a Bedouin worker on a kibbutz, so essentially a commune on a kibbutz in Israel, working in a factory. Guy has 2 wives. I mean, clearly a devout Muslim. He was rescued by Israel, who put its own soldiers' lives at risk to rescue him. Why? Because he's an Israeli citizen. That's why. Even though he's an Arab, even though he's a Muslim, he has full rights in Israel. He has such full rights in Israel that they're willing to put Israeli soldiers at risk, their lives at risk, to rescue him and to return him home to his family. So God bless the IDF. God bless Israel. And to all of you Israel haters out there, I don't know what to say to you. You're on the wrong side of history. It's really terrible. And I don't know. I don't know what else to say to you about that. That's an exciting thing to see that happen. All right, let's go back to something domestic here. There's another form, I would call it a form of terrorism here in the United States, because I'm terrified of our ballooning budget, of the incredible amounts of money that are being spent. Look, I'm old enough to remember when nobody had ever heard the word trillion. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I mean that literally. We didn't learn what a trillion was in school. I didn't learn it in junior high or high school. I didn't learn it in college. The number trillion wasn't something that was talked about. It's not that it didn't exist. It just wasn't talked about. Now we talk about it. We throw it around casually because the federal government is running multi-trillion-dollar deficits every single year. It's absolutely outrageous, and it can't continue forever. And if I'm not mistaken, I think PragerU and Steve Forbes have something to say about this.
I'm here to collect your $600,000 share of the national debt.
What? We don't have $600,000?
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to your baby. Have a nice life.
This isn't a made-up horror story. It's real. It is the unpaid credit card bill our kids and our grandkids are facing. Money they didn't spend, but will have to pay. The Democrats point their finger at the Republicans. The Republicans point back at the Democrats. The truth is that the politicians of both parties have brought us to the edge of this financial cliff. They say they're spending all this money with the best of intentions. The trillions are needed to end hunger and reduce inequality, provide everyone with free health care, and save the planet from global warming. But there's no way around the simple math. You can't spend what you don't have.
I mean, how can you say it any more simply than that, right? I mean, that is direct and simple and to the point. And to be fair, and he said this, it's Democrats and Republicans, right? That's where the deficit comes from. It's not just Democrats. I hate to tell you that if you're a conservative Republican. Unfortunately, the Republicans certainly have not been fiscally conservative. Like, I'm a fan of Donald Trump. He was not fiscally conservative. He's a big spending Republican. Unfortunately, that's been the mold of Republicans for a long time past. Democrats spend more and Republicans spend a lot and a lot more, right? That's how it works. And I think this is outrageous, and we're going to have to do something about that. Do you believe, just ask yourself this question, do you believe that Congress and the president under any administration are going to cut the budget? I'll wait. Anybody believe that? Anybody? If you do, you're a simpleton. I don't know what you're smoking. I don't know what you're drinking. It's never happened before in American history. The only president ever to limit or to cut the size and scope of the federal government is Calvin Coolidge, right? And so that means going all the way back to President George Washington and all the way through both Trump and Biden. No president other than Calvin Coolidge has cut the size and scope of the federal government. And so if you expect that the federal government is going to do that, then that's foolish. The only way we're going to get it done, and it has to get done, as Steve Forbes said, can't keep spending money you don't have. It's the only way you're going to get it done is we the people. There is no other way. And the way we the people do that is we call a convention of states according to Article 5 of the United States Constitution, and we stop the spending. We impose a balanced budget amendment. We impose tax caps. We impose spending caps. All of these limits, we put fiscal restraints around the federal government, or they are going to crash the government. This is personal to me. Saw that little baby in that video. I have a little granddaughter that was just born. She now owes over $600,000 to the federal government. Got to be honest with you, that makes me angry. And so I'm going to fight twice as hard as I've been fighting, 5 times as hard. I'm just going to keep fighting until we get a convention of states and we impose fiscal restraints on the federal government. I hope you guys are with me on that, because I don't know any other way that we're going to save the United States of America. That's really, that's all we got. That is the tool we have, because they're never going to do it themselves. And you know what? When you look at this, I know you agree with what I'm saying, the vast majority of you, and I know the vast majority of Americans do, just generally across the board. There's a brand new poll out from Rasmussen, and it says large majorities favor term limits for the leaders of government agencies, right? In other words, I know that you guys believe in a balanced budget amendment, and I know you believe we got to get those folks out of Washington, D.C. too. And if you look at the numbers, it's incredible. Term limits for the leaders of government agencies, 81% of Americans believe this. I call this the Fauci Amendment. We should never have anybody in a federal government position for 40, 50 years. That should never happen again. They consolidate power. They're unanswerable. They're unaccountable. And we got to stop it. And 81% of the public agrees. A large majority, 79% that we need term limits for members of Congress. You think McConnell, Pelosi, Schumer, all of these people, right? They've been there forever. As long as you or I can remember, we got to get them out of there. But if we're going to do that, by the way, I would say, and our resolution has this, we also have to have term limits on staffers and bureaucrats, because we don't want to give all the power to the staffers and bureaucrats. Now, a lot of people are talking about the Supreme Court these days. 61% say term limits on United States Supreme Court justices. I might be in favor, especially of, say, an age term limit on Supreme Court justices, maybe over 80 or something like that. And of course, anybody who's in right now would have to be grandfathered in, or just let's call it 12-year terms or 16-year terms. I think we need to debate this, and we need to debate it now. How do we get there? We call a convention of states. I love all these numbers, 81%, 79%, 61%. Do you think Congress cares about those numbers? Do you think they're going to propose those amendments? Of course, they're not going to. It's going to take you by calling a convention of states. You can get involved in that by going to conventionofstates.com. You can sign the petition. You can learn more, conventionofstates.com. You know, we talked about the money that's being spent, and you saw Steve Forbes saying you can't spend what's not there. You can't do that forever. Well, the woman who wants to be president, Kamala Harris, she has a plan for all of this. She has a brand new tax plan, and you're going to be really excited about it, because if you like your taxes, you're going to get to keep paying those taxes. And in fact, you're going to get to pay a whole lot more. How about 45% on capital gains, or 48% on capital? What are capital gains? Capital gains say that when you've invested something and then you cash out on that investment, then you pay a higher tax rate than a normal tax rate on those capital gains. So you're going to pay 48%. But now they have a new and creative one, which is you're going to pay on unrealized gain. What that means is you don't have to sell the thing. Imagine your house. Imagine if you live in a house that's worth $500,000. And imagine next year that house is worth $600,000. Let's say it's gone up by 20%. It's now worth $600,000. Well, you're going to owe tax on that $100,000 gain. And they call it a gain, even though you haven't sold your house, you haven't put that cash in your pocket, and you might lose that money in the future if that house goes down in value, but you're going to pay taxes, and they're going to make you pay roughly 25% of that, or $25,000 out of your pocket. Where are you going to get that cash from? You haven't sold the house. Where's that money going to come from? They don't care. They want you bankrupt. They want you to be a slave to the state. That's what they are looking for. Now, by the way, their explanation for this, I heard one of their talking heads say, well, I mean, your property taxes are taxes on unrealized gain. And why are people so bent out of shape about that? What he means by that is your property taxes go up when the value of your property goes up, and you pay taxes on that. And if you're willing to accept that, you should be willing to accept this. Well, here's what I say about property taxes. Dude, I agree with you. That's a tax on unrealized gain, and I shouldn't have to pay that. I hate that. Here in Texas, it's a major problem. Property tax is a major issue. We're working on reforming that. We should do away with property taxes. You shouldn't be taxed on unrealized gain. You shouldn't be taxed on property that you continue to hold, that you've always held. You probably paid tax when you bought it. It's outrageous. And so we need to stop that. It's not a reason to justify further taxes on unrealized gains. So what Harris says is if you like your taxes, you can keep them, and they're going to go up even more. She intends to do away with the Trump tax cuts by letting them expire, and she intends to raise a lot more taxes because what she says is this is not a spending problem at all. We don't have a spending problem. They're not having a spending problem in Washington, D.C. They're not addicted to spending. The problem is you don't give them enough money. It's a revenue problem. You see, it's not a spending problem. So if that's what you want, if that's what you're looking for, if you want to spend more of your hard-earned dollars, if you want to give more of your hard-earned money to Washington, D.C., then I suggest that you support Kamala Harris. All right, a couple of promos before we go to Q&A today. We've got Tucker Carlson live on tour all over the country. I'm excited about that. Tucker, of course, is a supporter of Convention Estates. Good friend of mine. Really excited he's out there live on tour. I'm going to go meet him at a couple of the stops. We're going to have COS people live at every stop in the lobby with a booth, giving out information, having people sign petitions, stop in, say hi. And if you want to go to one of those events, you go to tuckercarlson.com. And by the way, Tucker loves you so much that he gave you 15% off on tickets. So go to tuckercarlson.com and go to the events page. And there you can buy your tickets for your location. You're going to put in the discount code COS15. That gets you a 15% discount. Hopefully, I'll see you in your location. On COS at Home, that's this Wednesday at 8 p.m. On all the social media platforms where we stream. You're going to have Ryan Walters, who is the state superintendent of schools in Oklahoma, doing a lot of great stuff. He's a supporter of Convention Estates, but he's doing amazing things in Oklahoma. We need a superintendent like him in all the states. He's going to talk about Convention Estates, and he's going to talk about everything he's got going on in Oklahoma. Again, that's 8 p.m. Eastern time this Wednesday, conventionofstates.com/at-home. Also, don't forget to take the Constitution Challenge. What is that? Well, September is Constitution Month, right? September 15th, 1787. That's the day we get Article 5 of the Constitution. 17th is the day the Constitution gets signed. So that's Constitution Week. If you go to conventionofstates.com/1787, you can download our Pocket Constitution for free. There's a free fun activity book for kids and a lot more. Make sure you take that Constitution Challenge, read the Constitution. Do it this year if you haven't done it before. And even if you've done it before, do it a whole bunch more. All right, now we're going to go to my favorite section, which is the Ask Mark Anything section. And it does mean anything, like literally anything. You can give questions to me for this at conventionestates.com/askmark, conventionestates.com/askmark. First question is from Richard Cameron. And he said, how do we get out of this cycle of two bad choices for president? Third party is a huge uphill battle, but is there anything we can do to create a good option? How many years or election cycles do you think it would take? Richard, right now, I would say we can't get out of the two-party system. I mean, unfortunately, that's been sort of locked down in state law. It shouldn't have been this way. Parties were supposed to be essentially legal entities, kind of like clubs. Unfortunately, what happened is a lot of this stuff got ensconced in state law by incumbents, and it is anti-third party. It's just the way it is. And so if we want better candidates in any race, whether you're talking about the president or all the way down to school board, it's up to us to work for those candidates and get those nominated. Remember, a party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, that party is only an empty vessel, an empty vase, right? And we fill it with whatever values we want, with whatever candidates we want. That part's up to us. That's on us. And I think we can make a big difference in a single election cycle. All right, the next question is from JB, and this is regarding the 1861 Article 5 application. He says, if this application has not been rescinded, then we're at 20 out of 34. Just so you guys know what JB's talking about is in 1861, there was an Article 5 application made by a bunch of states for what is called a general convention, an unrestricted. It's just a general request to get together in a convention to discuss amendments. And the real question that comes up here is a question about aggregation. In other words, we have an application that is very specific. It has 3 subject matter areas asked for a convention regarding fiscal restraints on the federal government, regarding term limits for Congress and federal officials, and regarding limits on the scope and jurisdiction of the federal government. And the question I think that JB's asking is, does this correspond with or aggregate with this 1861 Article 5 application? And my answer to that would be no, generally speaking, because these states asked for something very specific. They said, hey, we want an application. We want to get into convention to talk about everything, anything and everything. That's their intent. And states' intent is what controls. they weren't looking for a convention to talk about a limited number of things. And I can imagine myself as one of the legislators in those states saying, no, I don't want to just talk about these three things. I don't want to get into convention unless we're going to talk about everything. I'm not interested in those three things. There are other things that I'm interested in, or I'm interested in one of those things that you said, but not the other two. I don't want to be limited to those other two. And so I think it's pretty clear that a state that has a general application wasn't interested in getting into convention to talk about a limited number of things. So I think that's what this question is about, JB. And I don't think that general applications like that are going to aggregate with our application. So all I want to do in closing is say to you guys, never be discouraged. Just never be discouraged. I mean, you will see things that happen that discourage you, like an individual event, but don't be discouraged overall. You should always have hope. One, if you're a person of faith, you have hope, the ultimate hope in Jesus Christ. If that's not you, I'll pray for you, and I hope you get to the point where you have that hope. But even if you don't have that hope, you got to have hope, because human beings need hope to live, right? You don't need food. You can live for a long time without food. You can live for days without water. But without hope, man, you just give up. You give up the will to live. And we want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. Always be hopeful. Always know that tomorrow can be brighter than today. Don't look to the future and see only darkness. Look for the bright things. We'll bring a lot of them to you here on the BattleCry, and we will see you next Sunday night on the BattleCry.